I would love all the panelists to just, if you guys can give a quick intro about yourself, that'll be great. Maybe start it from you. Aaron.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Aaron. I lead product at Sahara AI. Quickly about me, I've been building software for over 15 years. I've worked in investment banking. I've worked in fintech. I've worked at big tech. And I've always been passionate about cryptography and blockchain tech. In 2022, I took on leading integrations at Chainlink. And now I'm 6 months deep into the exciting world of decentralized AI, and I love it.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Leonid. I'm a head of ecosystem at Network 3. At Network 3, we are an infrastructure for edge AI. So I'm super passionate about the intersection of edge AI, local LLMs, and blockchain. We're leveraging trusted execution environment, decentralized federated learning. I'm pretty curious about how it all works together. I'm actually a senior at the school. I'm doing finance and data science. So super excited, and thanks for inviting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kenneth Hurley. I've been kind of in the technology space since the 80s. I actually kind of consider myself a 10x programmer back in the day. Today, I'm probably a 100x programmer thanks to AI, which I've kind of proven recently. I kind of love C++ and always have. I did a bunch of games. You can look me up on Moby Games. But we have a blockchain DePIN AI system that I started doing in 2016 and wrote a patent at the end of 2018 and got the patent filed in 2019. And so this is nothing new to me, the DePIN side of things. This has been kind of a culmination of my career because I worked at NVIDIA for 4 years, taught people how to do shaders and transforming lighting and GPUs and things like that. So extremely technical. But I've run public companies before. I started a public company called Signature Devices. And then Genius Ventures was started in 2016, but I worked at Google and Amazon, a couple stints, which I don't recommend for anybody that really wants to move forward and disrupt the industry. I'd rather you kind of do your own startup. But so that's my background.
Great day. Thank you, brother. Great day, and thank you for everybody here hosting this, putting this on. I'm Savon Springer. I am on the Partnerships and Investments team at Miston Labs. We're the original contributor to the Suite Blockchain. I've been at this particular company for a little over a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent a little over a year at Palm NFT Studio. And in 2020, I started my own advisory firm to help educate people who were aware that this industry is really critical, really important, but we're a bit missing on some of the nuances. What is a blockchain? What's a ledger? Those sort of things. And really beyond that, personally, really big proponent of the technology, really feel it's critical for humanity moving forward, and eager to be on this panel today.
Thank you all the panelists. You all have great backgrounds. I'm very excited to host you, all of you. And so how we are going to run this is Arush and me are going to alternate between the questions, and we'll give in between the panel, we can give some time for the audience questions if there are any. And then at the end, whatever time we have left, we can do some more questions from us. So I'll let Arush start with what questions he has.
Hi. So it's an open question. You could go by one and start answering the question. This is a very general question for the audience, given that decentralized AI is a new space and not many people are aware of it. So what is decentralized AI in the simplest definition, according to you? And how does it differ from what we have in form of OpenAI, Anthropic, and more? So love to have you answer that.
I'll jump in. So I would actually separate the AI component from the decentralized component to begin with. And I think with that, I think permissionless, I think distributed, I also think incentive mechanisms. And so when you compare to something like OpenAI or Anthropic to something like decentralized AI, one, you have the ability that anybody can participate. That either looks like them providing GPU or hardware resources, providing data sets, but you also get resiliency built in because you don't have everything centralized under the control or mandate of one entity and their AWS clusters or whatever else it might be. Then you have the permissionless part. as we all know, when OpenAI first came out, ChatGPT, certain regions were not able to access the tooling. So being able to access this no matter where you are, who you are, is also really critical. And then I think the biggest difference may be the incentive mechanisms from the jump and using that as a driving force to grow the network, bootstrap the network, but also get people to want to engage and be able to benefit in the capture that takes place.
Great answer. And just building on that, I mean, it feels a little bit of like David versus Goliath. Right now, consolidation of power, it's all happening in centralized AI. And participation when using those systems only reinforces that power as well. So for me, when I think about decentralized AI, I think about a more equitable way of rewarding through incentives all the participants in AI. And I also think about how we want to use AI and implement it to guide what we're trying to do here in society.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of your points. I feel like with each response you send to whatever OpenAI Claude tools, each response is kind of like consolidates the power probably of those projects. I feel like a good example is like, imagine if OpenAI Office is going to be raided tomorrow and most of your API keys will stop working and your responses will not be generated and half of YC badge companies will basically not exist. So I think it's important to differentiate centralized AI because it has its own audience and decentralized AI because it's built for its specific audience, for users who either need like confidential computing, who work with sensitive data sets. So there will be users who will be using centralized AI probably forever, but some people hate on me to talk this, but I feel like our applications is not a competitor for centralized AI. It's built for the audience, which will be leveraging our solutions. So, and imagine OpenAI Office is not working. So having the kind of like the decentralized infrastructure, which is like distributed, you don't have one point of failure. You have like, it's distributed around like, for example, Network 3 is distributed in like 189 countries. So, and we just grew by 100K nodes over the 1 week. So it's super hype times for us and pretty excited. So I feel like that's kind of like the important pain point which decentralized AI is solving.
I'm glad to be on this panel, actually, because it's refreshing to hear everybody's perspective on decentralized AI. And Genius AI is exactly what you guys are talking about. We've been working on it for 8 years, but we can operate on any device. And we built an infrastructure that can operate on your iPhone. It's cross-platform. It can actually be embedded behind games. So like while you're playing the game, we can leverage the GPU to actually do AI. And the reason is because back in 2016, I noticed folding at home, protein folding to help cure cancer, was having problems with GPU access because everybody was doing mining and all this other stuff. So since I worked at NVIDIA for 4 years, I knew that a lot of the phones and your home devices were capable. So I started building Genius to leverage that to help cure cancer. That's how I set out to do this. But there's 18 billion phones out there that are capable of doing GPU. The biggest issue was the level of AI, whether you're doing large language models with trillions of parameters, really requires a centralized and a lot of money to spend on that. But once that's solved, you can do RAG and you can do a bunch of other stuff on the decentralized and retraining and inference on these decentralized devices that can cut the cost down to nearly zero. And in fact, everybody was talking about the monetization side of things. We have that built in where the whole system uses our own blockchain to basically pay for it. And that blockchain is like a level 1, layer 1 blockchain that hooks into other blockchains or bridges between other blockchains like Ethereum and Polygon and Base and such. But in general, the centralized is, I call them semi-decentralized because you can run a bunch of high-end GPUs or high-end CPUs to do devices, but true decentralization requires that you also access low-end devices so that you can pay somebody out in Africa, for instance, that has a mobile phone with a GPU on it. We're trying to decentralize the payment system so it gets distributed and democratizes AI, basically. And so glad to be on this panel, to hear everybody else kind of in the same mindset and know that this disruption is coming. I predicted this back in 2016, and I believe in the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot of changes with AI and decentralization.
Yeah, I just want to add on top of it. You mentioned about like Africans that we can like leverage the device from there. It's interesting because like I had a conversation 2 days ago with Aaron Bessie. He's the head of product at IoTax, and we're like talking about universal basic income. That it's like DePIN can actually be like certainly a playground for like UBI, where like you can leverage your like hardware device where almost everyone have, and it can run like almost like constantly and can be generating you real revenue. So.
Just one comment on that. One of the things that I've noticed is what I've taken the mindset of is let's build the infrastructure and let Microsoft Research and Google Research and all those guys solve the decentralization problem. So, and they're doing that. They're basically, doing things like making federated learning better and faster and optimizing, gradient descent and stuff like that for us. So we're not solving that problem. They're doing it for us, which is really nice because we can just sit back and go, okay, you guys solve the AI part of it and how we split it up, and we'll just provide the infrastructure, which is really great. Kind of for us, we're getting a free ride from all the research that they're doing.
Amazing. Thanks for that, and thanks for the internal discussion you have. I think I could never take the discussion to that point because you're just talking to each other. That adds to a lot of value. But one thing I've been wondering is that decentralized AI has been more like a research playground right now. That's what I have been told, that it's still not powerful enough to take on centralized AI. And as Leonard pointed out, that we might not even be competing with all the applications of centralized AI maybe. But how do you think, what would be the path of traction look like for decentralized AI? And I'll actually open it up for all the panelists, what they think, where will that eureka moment for decentralized AI come?
Yeah, I'm eager to take a first stab at this because I think about this every day. Right. How do we get traction in decentralized AI? I think inherently, like the premise of that question almost is like misleading. And the approach that my team is taking is, what are the problems people have with AI today? Silence, right. Full stop there. What are those problems? And how can we help solve them through our solutions? Most people, whether it's your family, your friends, they don't care if it's centralized or decentralized. They want AI that's cheap, good, probably hyper-personalized. They want to feel like it's safe to use, and they probably want to feel like secure when they're using it. And privacy matters, but maybe not to the extent that we all think it does. Look at Apple. They've been incredibly successful, building huge ecosystems. They take a lot of pride in privacy. But at the end of the day, you're still not totally decentralized. You're still not totally in control of your data, and that's good enough for a lot of consumers. So I think our job is to better understand what the real problems are, that today the technology is good enough to solve those in a better way versus centralized solutions, and to get ahead. And I think at Sahara, we think that some of those places are around hyper-personalization because we think your data and who you are as a person digitally is something you should be in control of and take with you. Imagine a future where you went and you logged in anywhere, and immediately that agent, that AI that you're using, has access to data in a safe way, right? Like, what are those rails? What would that look like? That starts getting exciting. And then on top of that, how do we start breaking down some of these other inefficiencies so that the technology that's making that possible is just as cheap and commodified as anything else, right? Like, so I think fundamentally we need to stop thinking about it as like centralized versus decentralized. And I'm not picking on you because I know this is the way we all do talk about it. And we just need to talk about it as AI and real human or business problems.
Yeah, and adding to that, very well said. I think we're going to start to see this crossover. If we fundamentally, there's no case study right now right? As you've been working on AI for such a long time, AI is not a new thing. Even the way that algorithms work on social media, you can say that as a form of AI, right? But it wasn't until ChatGPT came around that most people realized, oh, wow, there is something that I can engage with, I can use in a way that they hadn't seen before. And to that point, we don't necessarily have that from a decentralized or a blockchain perspective right now. But a couple of industries or use cases where I do think that this is quickly going to become, we will find a case study, are agents as well as video games. And part of why agents are going to require blockchain is because they need some way to pay one another, right? And expecting them to use a Stripe account or a MasterCard or a Visa card doesn't make a lot of sense. If something is digitally native by nature, why not use a digitally native payment system? That could be stablecoins, that could be Bitcoin, that could be ETH, that could be SWI, that could be any number of token, but that rail where they can pay each other in a permissionless, frictionless way and do it any time of day is going to be critical. And as we see agents gain more and more traction, not just to do things locally on their computer, but actually reach out, book a flight, pay for that flight, pay for something, order a thing, it's going to require these developers and these companies to engage with the blockchain component. As they begin to do that, they will naturally become more open-minded to the other elements that could be incorporated or improved to make better products, to make cheaper products, to make more private and secure products. And a lot of what's being developed right now are the core primitives and protocols, things like Morpheus, like Akash, like Render. People may have heard of some of these, but for the most part, there's no real application that is the starlight for the underlying protocol yet.
I really believe that centralized AI is kind of going the way of the dinosaur, and here's why. If anybody knows what the law of diminishing returns are, basically they're all focused on large language models mainly, and that's great for interaction with people. But China just did something where OpenAI took like $1 billion to train their latest ChatGPT, or 4, I think it was, that was 4.0. And China, with 2,000 GPUs, basically trained their model with for $3 million. Big reduction in cost. And so as people are starting to put articles out about how the law of diminishing returns happens, is because, they keep training. You can add more GPUs, you can add more, but it kind of hockey sticks down, logarithmically on the gains that you get from that. And so in general, decentralized AI to me is more use cases, as he's pointed out, for everything from booking a flight to payments and the AI payments and things like that. So it already is, there is a lot of decentralized AI. If you look up federated learning and federated training and all that, they've been working on that for a lot of years. And so I don't think there's going to be a necessity to keep going to centralized AI for anything except for their trained data. Because once you have that, they can retrain all they want, but you can retrain on devices. And so that reduces the cost of retraining. And even with OpenAI, I use it extensively, and Claude and all of them. And, as you know, it hallucinates. And so you got to give it a bunch of guardrails for how you do it. So it's still going to take some human interaction as well. Like I said earlier, I became a 100x programmer with it, but I asked it a question one time: is 1 the power of 2? And I had to convince it over like 3 questions that it was, and it just kept arguing with me until I got it down to a single very poignant question about it. And I think there's another one where how many R's are in strawberry that it fails at. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous that it can't really cognitively think about that. So I think the centralized AI, I think there's room for both of us, but I think centralized AI is going to go the way of the dinosaur, just like, Google search and Google and all those guys have late to the party, and they didn't even get involved in blockchain until recently. So that's kind of my take on the differences. I think there's room for both of us, but it's going to expand out to the world very quickly, the decentralized and the payment systems.
Yeah, no, I feel like, just adding on top, it's like decentralized AI is going to be like smaller models, less parameters, and more user specific and focused. It's kind of like what I see in terms of like partnerships. I look at projects I interact with daily, and as you mentioned, like users want to feel secure, but they don't really secure. It's like they want to have a feeling of like, okay, I'm secure. I'm in an ecosystem which cares about me. Most likely they don't. So, but having this like user specific like applications, that's important for like you make like user centric applications where and for the specific use cases. So.
Yeah, those were some really interesting insights on privacy, hyper personalization, or like law of diminishing returns. I have a follow up to that. What do you think currently would be the most important driver that would encourage centralized users to the users of centralized ecosystem to move to decentralized AI on an like everyday basis?
I'll go first on that one. So in general, I don't think we need to worry about it because most of the centralized are, North Americans that or first world countries that can afford that kind of stuff, right? We get it on the GPU on your phone and things like that. They're never going to touch ChatGPT and pay anything for that. And so, even $20 a month is ridiculous for using ChatGPT for some of these countries. So in general, I don't think we have to kind of again worry about how we're going to permeate the world. Basically, this is coming and it's almost there for us. And it's just going to happen because there's no other real alternative for, 90% of the world. I mean, we talk about 10% of the world where, think about a GPU, right? There's a lot of people that have a $2,000 GPU that they can use for AI in a decentralized manner or a semi-decentralized manner. Well, people in Africa can't afford that. They make like, some of the countries make like $80 a month. So, they're not going to ever pay for anything. And so our system actually pays them out for playing games and running applications because we borrow their GPU to serve up the AI. And so they actually get paid instead of having to pay to use AI, which is kind of my way of trying to, like I said, permeate this throughout the world.
Thank you for reminding us that this is not the world, just right here, and who has access to pay for that. I think building upon that, decentralized AI can definitely reach more and more people by creating those incentives and allowing people to participate in that economy. And wouldn't it be great if when they contributed, that it wasn't just a single point in time, right? Like if you were helping with data labeling or you were helping with data collection, or which is maybe done in a federated learning way, that then those contributions, especially when they're to models that get monetized, where you're constantly getting a little bit of that revenue stream back to you. This is especially important if we think about replacing parts of the labor force and how that can work. So I think that this is one opportunity to take decentralized AI solutions to the world in a really authentic way. I think on top of that, I'm going to go back to if we do want to go to Western audiences that can pay for these centralized AI products today and these enterprises that are building on it, we have to be just as good. We have to provide capabilities that are better. We have to be able to compete. And to do that, we need to offer things that aren't possible through centralized AI solutions. And I think this comes from coming together to set certain standards and protocols that allow for the portability of those data, for models to be personalized, or for RAG-based searches that power useful AI responses, especially in generative models, to be served. And so we can't just say, hey, it's more secure here, it's more private here. It should be like literally, no, it's easier. You log in once and now all these AI apps just work for you better than they did before. And you can manage the control of this and get paid as people train on your data, if you even choose to allow that to happen. So I think we have to just head this off and actually go after the real apps, actually have chatbots, actually have similar applications developed that go head to head with OpenAI. And then it just won't be as awesome. As you said, there are diminishing returns there. And I think at this point, there's enough open source models that can be tweaked in smaller models that people can be using for all sorts of applications.
Yeah, I feel like consumer-oriented applications are not the area of monetization of either centralized or decentralized AI. I feel like there's so many choices you can do for free, and you wouldn't be paying $20 a month for GPT-4. So I feel like most of monetization is going to be happening around like B2B tools and for us, like talking from Network 3 perspective, I feel like it's important to establish a meaningful relationship and explain to user how the node is managing your data, compute power, bandwidth, and for the business side, it's important to like deliver the first cheaper, second more privacy centric, and third more scalable solutions to them. And in terms of scalability, there might be like more questions on like, but I feel like that certainly the privacy aspect will be like covered in certain scalability inefficiencies.
And en route to all of this, we have to bear in mind the friction that is involved at present. Because I agree that I think a lot of it is going to be driven B2B, but even then, setting up a wallet, getting any sort of token involved, this is all a cumbersome process for most people. Whereas when you go on something like Anthropic or these other providers, it's very simple. You go, you see a Stripe page, you put in your card, boom, you have the API keys, and you're good to go. But those pieces are missing right now. Also, the challenge of doing things in a distributed way is often it's a bit slower at first because you have to build up and get those network effects, get the buy-in, figure out some sort of way to standardize processes and quality. But then once you do that and you have certain applications and you see those things start to run away, then people begin to kind of have that, oh, this is something that works, let me try that path. And I think a similar phenomenon for anybody who's on crypto Twitter, it's kind of a part of my profession at this point, are these agents that are running Twitter accounts these days. And when thinking about the hyper-personalization piece of it and influencers, you think about TikTok culture and Instagram culture and all these people across the world, Western, Eastern, wherever, who have a particular niche of interest. And being able to create an agent that is hyper-focused on that one person's interest and engages with that person. There's a loneliness epidemic. I'm not trying to get too deep or philosophical here, but for a lot of people, and over the next decade, 2 decades, we're going to see people, their best friends will be these agents, will be these machines and these algorithms. And I personally don't think that's really something that the centralized entities are going to get into, specifically because of the parameters on their data sets and what they allow and disallow in terms of inputs and outputs and interactions. And that's another area where having these decentralized models that are much more tailored, but also maybe don't have the same biases or are hyper biased in another way that wouldn't be allowed to get through in these other training data sets is all going to be a flywheel.
So yes, to all that. And when it comes to, if you look at specific like use cases where the hyper personalizations would start to shine, like I'm very into health and fitness. Well, I was until I tore my bicep like 2 months ago. Just surgery and recovery have been great. Thank you. So how do you use a better AI for that? How do you have one that knows your schedule, how well you slept? Does it know what how much time you have today? Does it know what your nutrition is? Like if we wanted to design things like that, we suddenly have an orchestration problem with centralized AI. And you have a problem where it, the sum is not greater than the parts. With decentralized AI, you can build all those types of agents and put them together in a composable fashion and get a system that's actually offering more value than those individual pieces if they're all just delivered distinctly. So I think it's really important that if we want to solve things that aren't so easily solved with centralized AI today, we need to take a unified approach in like how we orchestrate this to provide better solutions either for people or for businesses. And that's regardless of whether it's running, on a small model that's on your smartphone, or whether it's running on something in the cloud, or running on a completely verifiable compute node that's being validated by a network. Like it doesn't matter how that works as long as the end result is better and hopefully cheaper than those centralized solutions. And now we're not even talking about decentralized versus centralized. We're just talking about which products are going to win out in the end. So I'm very excited about setting up these standards, these protocols, these rails, and then starting to actually rally them together to deliver opinionated products that make things better for people.
I just really hope we will not get into the trap of meme coins, AI agent memes, and so I feel like that the industry will find the real utility and use cases. And I certainly because yesterday I was on a sitting at Muffet at like 1 a.m. actually today, and I was like on a Twitter Spaces, and there was like AI A16Z, like Elisa, the token went up like 1,000%, and someone started to dump it like from the founding team. And I'm seeing it, and I'm like, I really hope the industry of like AI and AI agents will not like become like a meme coin like playground for people to dump and pump. And because there is a real utility, but it's like we saw it back in 2021, where like there's a real like utility with like blockchain and like DeFi, and then we see like a bunch of like absolutely bullshit, worthless projects, like just scamming people, and I hope we will not like get into this trap.
It's not either or. You can have both.
You can have both, and you probably have but it's like it's kind of a huge red flag for like consumer. If consumer sees like there is like some meme coins going around, there is like some bullshit AI agents. How would you like take it like seriously later on from like normal side of the things?
But that's the UX problem, right? When we don't have the right abstractions and wallets, like most people shouldn't need to care about buying tokens to use AI that does stuff. They just want to use a payment method that they have. They want to get the service or product delivered to them. And if we can use the incentives and the architecture of this technology to bring that cost down and bring the quality up, good things will happen.
And I think that what we're seeing at present is just people experimenting. It's like when any new code comes out or a game comes out, people are going to break it. They're going to play with it and see what they can do. And we're seeing people spit, oh, agents are a thing. Damn, this is what can be done. And it's being spit out in mass. Because to his point, going from a 10x to 100x, that also means that the output, the volume, can have that same jump. And so the volume in scams, the volume in things that are low quality is also going to spike up. And so people's discernment is going to also need to elevate a bit, but it also creates market opportunities for people. And these are all dynamic forces that interact with each other and reinforce what are the areas of interest that somebody might want to peel a layer back on. And it's not about the actual influencer or the meme coin itself, but what is the underlying technology that allowed somebody to launch that thing and program it and train it. That's where people are going to pay attention to, the people who are building things.
Amazing. Thanks for that. I'm going to stop here for if there are any audience questions at this point. Go ahead.
Thank you all for your time and what you've been sharing. I think it's great. And kind of on that point of like meme coins and like getting mass adoption, isn't that like an avenue to mass adoption to try to get people from going from like ChatGPT and using these platforms to experimenting with these other avenues? So I guess my question is like, how do we get people to go into DeFi AI with like mass adoption?
So I would really request you direct it to one speaker so we can get through one more question. Any one speaker you can direct it to.
I think it's
Let me hear your perspective.
Okay.
Word. Appreciate it. I don't necessarily think that particular application needs mass adoption. As I just mentioned, I think it becomes more of a signal to gauge interest and drive where the innovation follows. Because if we go back to incentive mechanisms, right? And you can see this throughout crypto, even just different stock equities or whatever. There's a wealth effect that can take place. And so some of these people who jump in on something, they make 1,000% on their money, their mind share is now tied into this thing. They're now more likely to go talk to their friend about it or speak to somebody at Thanksgiving about it or whatever. And now you kind of have this hive mind, this locus of attention that begins to stretch out. Some people are going to have great experiences. Some people are going to have not great experiences. But it becomes an area, almost a node of attention and of focus. But I think as these things become more abstracted, you're going to experience it in a different way. My personal take and opinion is that one of the things that's going to do that most effectively are these video games. I brought it up earlier. I didn't finish my point. But right now, there's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of games that people can play. They're not all Fortnite. A lot of them are these hyper casual mobile games that are really popular in overseas markets. But imagining we're not far out from a place where instead of you sitting down with the controller and playing the game, you actually have an agent that is doing the game on your behalf. I think the perfect example is Sims or Zoo Tycoon or any of these simulator games that were really popular a decade, 2 decades ago. Imagining that you have tens of thousands, millions of people who have agents interacting, and it becomes almost a simulation. There's this thing, are we living in a simulation? Well, you can make this game, create a simulation. You have an agent that acts on your behalf, and now you can get real money involved. You can have those agents also doing things that affect the real world, like ordering things for you online, setting up a business with somebody else, so on and so forth. And that's not happening tomorrow, but I think as people ultimately find more convenience and value add from whatever this particular thing is, that's when it begins to gain more traction. And OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, these different things have made that user experience really friendly for people and made that value add really clear. And it's still a bit fuzzier on this other side of things. And so there's this smaller group of people who are paying attention right now. And naturally, over time, that'll grow and that'll adapt. Sure.
So I've been listening to a lot of talk here, and don't take this the wrong way, but everybody, you should try to disrupt and not compete. That's the only way you're going to make this happen, and that's what we set out to do. The meme coin thing, we launched our token on March 5th for $1.50, and it went to $197 in 10 days. And everybody was like, oh, it's a meme token, it's a meme token. And the only reason we launched our token was to check cross compatibility between different chains, a bridging system. And I kept telling everybody, I don't care what the price is, because everybody that's looking at the price is just churning money to make more money. And that's not what our project is about. We're like AI for good. We set out to cure cancer and things like that. And so we set out to disrupt the industry, and we're doing that. And so all those meme coins and everybody, I just sit back and laugh because I see, Render and Tau and BitTensor and everybody competing with each other. And we're not. We hide the wires behind the scenes. Like, you can embed our AI system in a game so that the person, like he was saying, the agents get paid. Well, somebody has to own the agents, so the money really has to go to somebody, right? And so if they're just paying each other as kind of an exchange for the work that they're doing, somebody still has to provide that hardware resource. So I don't think the meme coins... back up a second. I've been through this before. This is my second time. So I started a public company in Pink Sheets and what they call OTC markets. And this is back in 2005. And a bunch of Chinese companies came in and they were raising money. And so what it's all about is the people that are worried about the money need the money to develop something. Most of them. Sometimes it's just to scam you and get money back. Scamming, and we've seen a lot of that. People have duplicated my coin contracts and pretended to be Genius AI, and they've scammed a few people, and we've helped kind of get that corrected. But in general, I think that if you try to disrupt, or you set on a mission to disrupt, you don't have to worry about competing and worry about the other meme coins and all that, because that's just people, try to make money on money. And we're not doing that at all. So that's just, I'm not too worried about it personally, but if everybody else is competing because they need the money for development, I know that's a big problem. It happened, same thing in Pink Sheets. We were trying to raise money for development of video games and things like that, and we're competing with everybody else that was scamming. So we've seen this picture before, or at least I have. So
yeah, for me, it's just like, and for Network 3, I feel like one important aspect for this industry we're looking for, and like we don't want to be like even associated or like seen closer to the projects which are just trying to do a meme. And I feel like every project needs to bring like real utility, real solutions, and you probably certainly need to ignore your token price. We haven't published our token yet, so it's all live, but TG is coming pretty soon. Is you need to deliver actual like utility. You need to have your real customers who are bringing you real revenue, and probably at a certain point you need to ignore your market price, because like it's probably relevant to you to a certain point before users see your project use cases and like real recognition. But one of the points I was talking to is that if the industry of like AI agents, LLMs will be full of bullshit AI tokens, it will be really hard to get the user adoption of just the usual person who pays with credit card in Starbucks. Like, who is not like Web3, who is not really into AI, who probably just using ChatGPT like once, twice per week. That's going to be really hard to adopt people, and it will be the same probably level of adoption as like adopting people into DeFi is like, so because it will be perceived as like, oh, it's just one more project which is just trying to like do bullshit stuff. So I feel like that's important aspect in the industry, which I hope will not go.
So rounding it out, given that what you two just both brought up in terms of what's something that's doing something real, because I was just trying to answer your question directly. There are already several projects that deliver real value and do it in a way that feels native, i.e. doesn't have all this friction. If you go to Venice.ai, this is an LLM interface that is built on top of Morpheus. It's a company started by Eric Voorhees. And you go and you interact with it, and it is incredibly similar to the experience using Claude or using ChatGPT. Now, the difference here, you can choose a wider range of models. They're all open source models. And also, it does not censor the output. So that's another big difference in when you go and use these other models. But same exact experience. If you want to sign up for a pro account, you can pay with a credit card. They have an API. You can use that API, plug it into an application that you're building. Render. A lot of people don't even know that they're using blockchain. They are a part of Otoy, which is a graphics company. They work very closely with Apple. They do a lot of the rendering, both from a software perspective and also a hardware acceleration standpoint. And they are allowing people to have access to GPU compute so that they can render their files and not need to actually have the GPUs or the hardware on site to do it. And so these are just two examples of applications that have been around for a while. Morpheus is much newer. Render's been around for 4+ years. But these things are already here. But fundamentally, I know we probably all sound like a broken record. It comes back to, is the user experience better? Are the value props there? Is it more convenient, cheaper, faster, more performant, more resilient? And it's going to take time.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for the question. So one thing, I've been wondering right now, all the AI engineers, all the AI product managers who have, even remotely some knowledge are really in demand, in terms of job market. Why should a talent which can go and work for these companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, why should they even be putting their talents to decentralized AI? What could be the right incentive structure look like for them?
I mean, it's autonomy and ownership over what you're building, ethical alignment. I think like a big part of like, what are we building? Why are we building it? What can it help with? I think that's really huge. And I think the opportunity to disrupt is not going to come from within centralized AI. You're just going to have more efficient algorithms. You're going to have, bigger models. You're going to have cheap, better usage of energy. I mean, look at like Microsoft and these others now going after power. Literally, energy is the next blocker for growth towards AGI. I mean, sure, if you want to get on that ship, you're also not going to, as someone who's worked at big tech, your own career is going to be, I think, more limited in growth. Like if you're a top performer, there's no question that going to a smaller company is going to supercharge everything about what you do. I mean, given you choose the right company. But I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of chime in on this because it depends on what you're after for your life, really, because I worked at Google for 4 years. I worked at NVIDIA for 4 years. I worked at Amazon for a year. That was just to pay the bills at the time. But I found it so unfulfilling because I always like to learn new stuff. And I've been learning new stuff for, well over 43 years in the tech space. And, I would not recommend anybody go work for when I worked at Google, it was the most miserable 4 years of my life, believe it or not. Luckily, I had started the Genius Project before that, and they just needed a program manager, technical program manager. So they threw a bunch of money at me, and I said, okay, well, I can do this for 4 years and fund my project, so I don't have to go out and get VC money. But towards the end of that, my mental state was really bad because I wasn't learning anything new, and I like to grow constantly, keep my brain active. And so if you want to go to work for Anthropic or any of the big players, you're going to be part of the Borg, basically, and it's a Star Trek reference for some of you younger people. You get in there and you get this desk and you're sitting next to people and you're just a number and you're making them billions of dollars. And yeah, you might be able to pay your bills. And if you're that, there's two types of people I've realized in this world. The people that like that and don't mind that, where they'll go in and they'll work, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 and then come home and watch TV. And they just don't have any desire to kind of grow themselves as a person. And so if you're that type of person and you have really good tech smarts, go to work for a big company. And if you don't, and you really want to make something of your life, take it from me, don't work for somebody.
I have real quick. I'm still pretty young, so I have a very interesting perspective on that. I feel like you would be unable to do any disruption if your Uber driver talks about crypto or AI. I feel like the disruption has already been made. If, to the sort of point, I feel like to the centralized AI. I feel like if people who never build this, but they talk about it, I feel like disruption point already happens. They already know about it. It's already been delivered, and that's why I see the decentralized AI. It's and for me, I like to go and research the things which is there is not much of a Google search can be done on it, and you need to actually go into sources. You need to go to the panels. You need to talk to people, and I feel like that's kind of interesting because you should always discover and do the things which. It's just personally my opinion, but I feel like how I shape my life is that I would love to discover. I would love to learn new things, which kind of were never. There is not there is certain risk involved into research it, but this risk is not that I'm losing money or something. It's a risk that there is not enough information you need to collect. And one important thing in terms of hiring at Network 3, I don't really looking for degree or whatever your previous experiences. There is one thing I'm looking at. It's being able to connect two different points together and draw this graph. So that's kind of what I feel it's important at how I see the world and what I want to build in the future.
2 points. So one, yours about the advice of not going and working at one of these incumbents. I entirely get that perspective. On the flip side of it, though, I think it's hard to appreciate the difference of working at a nimble, smaller company where you can have higher impact if you've never actually seen the other side of the fence. Because it's all about perspective, right? And I think also, for all the bureaucracy that might exist at one of these gargantuan institutions that has hundreds of thousands of employees, there's also a lot of signal that can be extracted from that, lessons and learnings that can be taken from that environment, let alone connections, a network, and other learnings and experiences. And then one could take that and leverage it when they go to do something on their own or of a different sort. And I think that should not be ruled out. And I just want to encourage everybody here, if that is a part of your plan, don't be discouraged in it, but do be very eyes wide open about what that may actually look like in practice. Maybe be prepared to chew some glass, be a little bit frustrated at what that experience may be like. But I think there can still be value there depending on what your plan is. And then more specifically to your direct question about why would somebody go join another one of these companies, a smaller firm, a startup, I think it largely would come down to figuring out what extent of agency and impact that you're able to have there. Do you want that responsibility? Because not everybody really wants that responsibility, right? These are often not 9 to 5 jobs. These are all day long jobs. You have to be the one figuring it out. But I do think that fundamentally, just like the people who started early at Facebook, at Google, at these other places, if it does well, if it succeeds, your upside there is 100, 1,000x what it would be otherwise. And not everybody needs to go start your own company to do that. You can work alongside other people, be one of the early contributors, and still have a phenomenal impact and phenomenal upside.
Just really quick, working at a big company teaches you what not to do. Basically, every single time I've gone to work for a big company, except for NVIDIA, because they were more like a small startup when I started. And he's correct, if you want to get in there, but you have to get in there early. People that go to work for Meta, for instance, right now, it takes you 4 years and maybe you make a couple $100,000, in stock and things like that. But it's too late for you to really make the big money in there. And so this is one of the reasons I encourage you to look at startups. And I guess really it boils down to your risk tolerance. I'm a big risk taker and always have been. And so it's basically how much risk can you take? And if you aren't one of those people that can take a lot of risk, then yeah, go work for a big company. But you're also taking a mental state risk as well. And so you got to keep that in mind that, you are another cog in the wheel when you go work there, and you're not going to be doing research. You're not going to go into Meta and be doing research. They're going to give you some kind of low-end task when you first start. You're going to be grinding away on the lower-end code. You're not going to be able to disrupt anything. And so take it from me. I've worked at them for many, many different times. I worked at Electronic Arts twice. Back in the day, though, those were startups, and it was good. If you can find a small company that's well-funded, I recommend it, but not some big, 100,000 plus person company like Google or something like that. You're just going to get lost. I guarantee it.
I tend to agree with that. And I'd say wherever you look to go, what has been most valuable for me is finding places where every day when I get up, I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I care. I've been happier when I cared more. I was happier when I worked with people who shared similar values with me around integrity and more how to work together. I think that's really helped. And, when you work, especially when you're just getting started, working, especially whoever your boss is, unless you go and work for yourself from day one, that person or those people are going to teach you a hell of a lot. So it has to do with choosing the team and the people as much as the product or the mission, especially when you're in your formative stages of your career, wherever that might be.
Those were some really interesting insights about the experiences working in big tech and compared to a startup. I personally, I think, relate with those kind of experiences. I had a big tech offer last summer. I skipped that offer for working with the startup. And I think that was a great decision for me as well. I had a follow-up question. When we talk, not a follow-up question, I had a question relevant to when you're talking about decentralized AI, their novel use cases and their applications, what are certain use cases that you think centralized AI might not be able to fulfill in the near future?
I feel like we've talked about it a couple of times. I mean, we can reiterate, but if you're thinking about scale and you're thinking about super specific, almost verticalized models, you have to be super focused in what that data is. And I think it's a bit too niche. You explained this very well, that just the way that these monolithic structures work, they're not carving it. That's why the prompt engineering becomes so critical, because you have to guide it and steer it, and you have to give it all these references and give me output like this, but don't say this and take this out, and so on and so forth, where you could really bake those things in to a smaller, more nimble model that can also run locally on a device so more people can interact with it. And also from a performance standpoint, when it's local, you're not dealing with this crazy lag time or latency or, oh, we're too busy, get back to us later, or pay us to get priority. And so then it becomes an experiential thing as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quick, I love the fact that he talked about scaling, because that's what it boils down to is, here's a kind of statistic for you. There's only 550,000 H100s ever made for GPUs and AI. There's 18 billion phones out there, something like that, with GPUs, 18 billion devices compared to 550,000. So scaling and decentralization they can't do either one of those effectively, because they have the large language models that require the closeness and the centralization of the servers.
Thank you for bringing metrics to the talk, by the way. We should all be doing more of that. I think, you already mentioned federated learning. I think that that's huge, especially when it comes to anything that we need to do in a privacy preserved way. When it comes to healthcare and research, that's been shown time and time again. Some of you may have remembered even during COVID when we had the alerts on our phone. I mean, that was kind of like a small version of this that we all experienced to some degree, maybe. I think and this is me now a little bit pitching, what Sahara is going after. I really think it comes down to portability, right? And if with centralized AI, you're really just working with one system at a time. And so if you want to bring your data with you, you've got to either work with these complicated structures and other systems and integrators to make all this work. And then the second you want to use something else, like all that can kind of be lost. So I think starting with what data is, who owns it, how we track its provenance and its usage throughout model training, and its access at runtime, and then being able to show how that happened. I mean, we don't know how AI thinks, and AI doesn't think today, right? It's a bunch of weights and biases, and you end up with a result. How did that happen? Which version of that did it? If I go to the doctor and I need a diagnosis and they're using an AI tool, don't we want to see which model was used and how it was trained? I sure would. I don't think that that's crazy to ask for. And I don't think that consumers care about it being decentralized. But I think that the right solutions are decentralized inherently, because that's the only way that you can prove that. That's the only way you can guarantee it. And as technologists, it is the answer to those problems. So I'm very excited on the data portability and the transparency front.
Just really quick on that note. Also, I've learned, and a lot of people are proponents of this, is that I want to own my own data. I don't want to give that to Anthropic and then have them use it and monetize it. I want to own it. I want to monetize my own data for my own health experiences and stuff like that. So I think that falls right into what you were talking about.
Or at least you should get paid for it.
Yeah, I should get paid for it. Yeah.
Just probably to add on top of those three awesome opinions, it's important to deliver a good product design, and kind of because if you just have an open source model where you need to just build your own bridges and just deploy it, it's if you have very bad, and with most of VCs, I kind of talked, and it's not in terms of can you invest in me, but it was just more casual chats, what's important for you? Most of I hear, and I especially asked, what's differentiates successful projects in the beginning, the ones which fail, and they're all saying one thing is product design, and I think delivering the cohesive, understandable, very user-oriented design, which adapts for different countries and for different ethnicities, for different languages. That's very important for AI. So
what you were speaking about, really both of you all, about owning that data, for anybody that maybe is missing the subtext there, NFTs are actually a massive viable option in being able to do that, because ultimately it's a representation of your data, and that can be updated over time. And it goes back to the last cycle, something you spoke about that last hype cycle and hype wave had to do with NFTs, but they were monkey pictures selling for $500,000. But the underlying fundamental technology there were non-fungible tokens. And when you do something like that, you can make it such that all of the data that you put into one of these models, or that it learns about you, you go into OpenAI. I'm also building an application that is context aware. We work our way around creating context awareness. It's a bit of a hack for it, but when you go into OpenAI, it has a memory module. If you, I don't know if they've allowed it for the free plan yet or not, but any conversation you have with it, it can draw back from that context. But if you were to use something like an NFT, you can make sure that there's a portability where you can take that and then jump into a different model and it has the same information. You can make a check or an uncheck on, okay, I wanted to know this aspect of my history. I don't want it to know this aspect over here. And that becomes really interesting as well.
Yeah, one of the cool things I would love to say to you is go to OpenAI right now to ChatGPT and just prompt it.
Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead. And prompt it based on my previous chats with you, draw an image of myself, and it actually will be hella accurate. I asked it, I asked my girlfriend, I asked my and it's I asked my dad, and my dad is using it for and it's and it actually gets your age correctly. It gets everything, even on low amount of respond of the chats. So if you want to do it, just do it, and then you will understand how much data is aggregated on you, and
Don't ask it to roast you. It knows you too well. Well, okay, own your data has been a phrase that I know I've written in my own docs, or I've seen them in our marketing docs here and there. And it's not just marketing though; it's because it is inherent. It's like an inherent primitive capability of this technology, which is the ability to whether it's to create an NFT, to say like, hey, this is owned by this person, and here's something that we can then do with it. We can transact, we can track it, but with centralized solutions, you're not doing that, and you're not rewarding the people fairly. So I think this all really comes down to incentive structures, and we just have a huge opportunity to build the right ones on top of this and start replacing what's happening today, little by little.
Yeah, just real briefly, the decentralization, like if you have the data on your phone, like, your birth date, for instance, your social security number, you can basically do the AI processing and it turns it into numbers and kind of almost obfuscates it, right? And then you can retrain some other data. And so your data remains private, remains on your phone, and you're feeding back your own data into a system. And so you should get paid for that. And really centralized servers, it has a lot of data on ChatGPT. And for me, because I've used it extensively over the last couple of years, and a friend of mine went and asked, hey, show me the top 20 games that Kenneth Hurley worked on. And I'm like, oh, it's not going to have any idea about that. Sure enough, pulled up every one of them. I'm like, oh, crap. And I often go into new chats, and I say, hey, based on our previous conversations and what you know about Genius AI, I'm thinking this. And they're like, oh, yeah, because Genius AI. I'm like, oh, okay, it's remembering all that stuff that I did that. And that's what you're talking about, the memory side of things. So it's actually kind of scary for me because they own all that data now, and I don't.
Well, last note on this. If we look, I use Gmail. I use Apple products. The amount of data that's already there on me is huge. And I think it's like $1 trillion or multi-trillion-dollar question, maybe I'm exaggerating now, to say, how do we flip around a lot of this? We've seen companies try to say, you own your social data. How do we instead flip this around where, if someone wants to advertise to you, they can pay you for the opportunity to give you a personalized ad? And I think we're talking about economic disruption based on the data economy flipping around. And so the only way we get there is if we build the apps on top of that data layer with the right controls in place from day one. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat the same kind of system with meme coins, and I don't want that.
I think you're absolutely correct, is that you might have your data, it might be your data, but they have the keys.
Yeah.
You need to own your own keys too. It's like a safe deposit box where you have the keys and it's sitting out there somewhere. And so, yeah, it's not only owning your data, but owning your keys too.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just generated it and it was hell accurate. Like I'm skiing, it's like a lot of crypto stuff I ask about. So it's like, it is very accurate. Like, and it just, yeah, and it's kind of like, you would love to have like this, like, kind of like lock mechanism where like you have your own keys. So it's like, absolutely. So.
Thank you, everyone. I would love to give you more time, but with just the time loss. But thank you, everyone. Audience, can we have a round of applause for them? We have small gifts for you, so if you just wait on that.
My name is Fernando from ValueNext, and I'm here to present to you what is at the forefront of all things web blockchain and Web3 as well. Imagine being able to see and understand what entire industries are doing, analyzing hundreds of thousands of text documents in one easy to understand and beautiful map. I have a tool that is able to allow people to be able to see numerous industries and get a bird's eye view of what people are doing and even what specific companies are doing and where the emerging technologies and sparse areas or areas of opportunities can be taken advantage of and utilized. And so a little bit about ValueNext is we are a post-IPO company who has worked with almost half of the global Fortune 500 companies in Japan, and many of whom represent over 70% of the Thomson Global Innovator 1000 Index. Some of our clients include Honda, Yazaki, and Mitsubishi Electric, to name a few. And from here, our approach is that we take tens, if not hundreds of thousands of all kinds of text data, whether it be research papers, patents, startup data, whatever you'd like. We cluster them according to how similar each documents are to each other, and then we visualize them accordingly, which allows everyone to be able to see what is going on in the entire industry. And so just to be able to understand this, just know that there will be a trend, there may be a potential trend line that would be shown. The radar has a multitude of other uses, from being able to see the centers of gravity of specific companies. And you can even see which areas are actually growing in nature. So you can think of this as like a weather channel, but for businesses. And most importantly, you can see the sort of white spaces or sparse areas or areas of opportunities where many companies or potential companies can go in and take advantage and be able to be one of the first early adopters to be able to serve that market before the storm is about to hit. And so, to give you an example, I was able to utilize a patent analysis taken from the United States Patent and Trademark Office to be able to analyze up to 10,000 patents and documents related to this text search query. And all that you see here are the keywords related to Web3 and decentralized ledgers and blockchain accordingly. So what you see here are basically the kinds of major areas growing and sparse areas. And what you are going to see next is basically it describes that there is a lot of focus around the major industries, around chemical supply chain management and medical smart contracts. We see that that area within the Web3 and blockchain space is kind of where the most lucrative spaces or where the areas of economic activity has been the highest. We also see a growing but also very major industry around decentralized high-resolution interface apps. So being able to create apps that are more secure and more reliable, as well as semiconductors and everything related to the hardware use of it. From here, we can also see what are the kinds of areas related to everything related from 2021. And shifting the radar to 2023, we see there has been this sort of shift towards the software space, and in particular, decentralized high-resolution interface apps have been kind of raising in prominence, as you can see once I do a before and after photo here. And within the radar, we could also see the top 20 contributors as well as inventors within the space. So we can see all the companies, or at least the top 20, since I cannot put thousands into this map here, which companies have contributed the most within the realm of Web3 spaces. And we can also see who have been the best contributors within the space as well. And keep in mind what you see here are basically the top 20, more or less, companies and people contributing within the space. But within the radar tool itself, you'd be able to type in like any person's name, whether it be your professor at UC Berkeley or someone from Harvard. The list can go on. And so this could, if you're a company, you'd be able to take advantage of it by being able to reach out to them or take a look at their activities accordingly for potential collaborations and so forth. Expanding into one of the major industries, as we talked about within the Web3 space and blockchain space, we see the top, analyzing within just that small blob on the left side, we see the top 10 assignees as in those who have contributed the most within this particular region of Web3 and blockchain spaces. And what you see here are, and those little dots are basically what we call clusters. And within that sort of blob space can contain thousands of clusters. And so within just one cluster, it has about 129 documents analyzed. So instead of having to manually read each and every patent or research paper, we have the tool to be able to do that for you. And this allows you or anyone to be able to see the greater picture, so to speak. And it will include patent samplings and so forth, and you can even filter out the results based on specific years or even specific keywords and key phrases. Now, within the second major area, we notice there is a significant focus and buildup, especially since 2021, around blockchain-based systems. So things related to display device and manufacturing. A lot of Japanese and Korean companies seem to be increasingly focused around patenting those systems within the blockchain and Web3 space. Also keep in mind that this entire data set was we only took data from 2021. So if you wanted to expand this further, please let me know, and then I'm happy to go all the way back to 1981 if you wanted to. And so this is the idea for blockchain-based systems. We see the top 10 assignees, and one of various clusters within that increasingly growing major area. Lastly, within the major area sector, we see there's a lot of activity around semiconductors. And so a lot of companies, especially within East Asia, from Samsung to Fuji to Taiwan Semiconductors, is very much deeply involved in the space to help the Web3 community grow. And it's also supported by the fact that they have consistently grown since 2021. And these are one of the many patents that has been taking place to be able to support that theory. Now going into the growing areas are topics and I guess, yes, areas that have been growing, especially in the last 6 to 12 months, more or less. And so within this space, we are able to see this kind of like rapidly growing area. And here are the top 10 companies that are actively kind of growing in the space. This area is where the companies have not yet established a foothold, where it is not as competitive as, say, the major areas. And so if you are a company looking to, provide some sort of service or niche, this would be a promising area to look into. And so because there are not too many competitors, so to speak, doing a lot of activity within the space, and hopefully through looking at some of the clusters here, it can inspire you to be able to serve that niche accordingly. And lastly, we are going to discuss the sparse areas, or areas that are not actively being utilized, but is where the storm is potentially heading to next. And so within this area, you'd be able to see Mitsubishi Chemical, Samsung, and even Harvard College and Caltech kind of like increasingly within the space, right outside the major area. On the top right, where it says IP tokenization, we see there's not too much activity going on here, but it seems quite promising in that there is some focus around IP tokenization, hence leveraging blockchain with IP patents and intellectual patents and trademarks. So being able to get into that space or have this sort of like decentralized collaboration where it makes it easier to be able to, for people who are trying to file patents and trademarks, to the USPTO, this could be an option for you as well. We also see a second promising area in between this sort of white spaces or areas between major areas. And so there's this pretty big blob in between two major clusters. Here are the list of companies that is in the space. We can see ThyssenKrupp to LG and Ford kind of like relatively in the space. So there is a lot of focus around automotive systems. And the patents kind of verify that, as well as the bar charts accordingly. And so overall, what we're going to show is, what you see here is basically a summary report. It's automatically generated. And I'm only going to mention like one category that seems to be dominating the entire space in the light blue. And what we see here is a patent category called A61K31. If you type it in on Google, it will also tell you what it means. And basically, there seems to be, overall, in the last 3 years, since 2021, there has been, within the Web3 and blockchain space, there is a lot of focus and activity around secure, transparent, and decentralized solutions, especially for those in pharmaceutical and healthcare industries. So if you are looking into figuring out how to continue building the blockchain and Web3 space and to enrich the lives of billions of people around the world, this could be a potential solution for you. Now, what I'm going to show you next is kind of like an emerging technology that seems very promising, but is actually potentially going to disrupt the Web3 space in the sense that it could be just like the Web3 space in general could be disrupted, or in the sense that it could be enhanced tenfold. And what I'm going to show you is a technology called quantum computing. And I figured this could be a potential promising avenue because it will put the current supercomputers of today to become obsolete. And so what I will do here is showcase kind of like a quick network analysis, patent analysis, and a research paper analysis to show you how this tool can be utilized for other forms of text information. And so first, we're going to see the network analysis. And as you can tell here today, there's many wonderful people to meet and learn from. While it's nice to spontaneously meet as many new people as possible, it would also be even better to create the set of individuals that can really help you expand your network. And so sometimes these people might fall within the white spaces as well, and you end up missing out on a great opportunity. And that's the white space that I was talking about. And so from here, to go through this section quickly, and the more interesting part on technology, we just want to quickly answer a few big questions on the screen here, such as what does the key player landscape in quantum computing look like? Where am I? And how can I navigate in the network amongst these key players? So basically, with this tool, we were able to gather 400 to visualize more or less about 400 companies out of, say, or 1,300 companies, founders, and investors from Crunchbase using quantum computing as a description. And from here, what you're going to see next is that the relationships are represented using network graphs, with nodes representing entities and edges representing investments. So being able to identify central nodes or key players using measures like this can really help kind of show you like this sort of analysis of how networks evolve over time, specifically how they evolve geographically over time. And so you can also do things like investor analysis or even collaboration networks to be able to potentially partner or reach out to that potential client or potential professor. And so like friendships, This is the landscape of key players in the quantum computing space that is disrupting potentially disrupting or significantly enhancing the quantum computing power of Web3 and blockchain. From here, what you see here are the blue dots representing players, and the distance will represent the relationships. The closer these dots are, the closer they have built essentially meaningful relationships through investments with each other. And so you can see the core groups in the center. If we zoom in, we can display who those key players are. And so what the network analysis reveals here are key investors like Creative Destruction Lab and the European Innovation Council as central nodes with a very high degree of connectivity to many startups. And so CDL, the Creative Destruction Lab, has been really pivotal, it seems, in nurturing these startups at the nexus of quantum computing and machine learning, which indicates a focus on investment strategy on ventures that integrate these cutting-edge technologies, including Web3 and blockchain. But we also noticed there has been a clear geographic divide, and based on this information gathered, both the CDL and the European Innovation Council show strong potential for collaboration within the quantum computing field. And given their extensive networks, experience in managing collaborative products and projects, and a track record of successful partnerships, both CDL and EIC are well positioned to facilitate this collaboration within the quantum computing community. And so CDL's global presence and focus on seed stage technology companies help complement EIC's strong investment within quantum technology startups and in ventures in Europe. And so, as we can see, overall there has been quite the divide. And so this opportunity to be able to help bridge that divide could involve joint funding initiatives, meaning you could be the one facilitating that sort of opportunity, or being able to co-host international conferences that bring together researchers and investors together from both networks and both sides of the pond, or establishing exchange programs for researchers and entrepreneurs to work in labs and startups in the other respective others network, or collaborative competitions or hackathons, or sharing of knowledge and IP or licensing, the list goes on. And so, hold on, let me see. And so, because we are a Japanese company, it kind of makes sense for us to quickly look at what's happening within the Japanese landscape. Unfortunately, this suggests a somewhat decentralized landscape with a few highly connected nodes that likely represent key organizations driving the industry. So within specific players, such as those in Japan, we see this somewhat smaller node, but we also see that QA and assist and preferred networks are marked as these sort of central nodes, indicating they are likely pivotal within the development of quantum computing and facilitating these sorts of powerful connections within the network. We also see Mitsubishi UFG Capital shown as kind of one of the main connectors between these central nodes and other entities. A separate cluster includes PD Aerospace and other companies that might indicate a separate focus on applying quantum computing within the aerospace sector. And it also hints at a specialized approach within the Japanese quantum computing landscape as well, indicating potential synergies or other industry applications. And so I'm going to showcase to you what the kind of patent analysis looks like here as well. And within this kind of data set, we took a little over 4,000 patents published since 2010 and ending until 2023. And what we see here is the gap in the middle within this heat map are surrounded by areas of intense activity like a quantum error connection, and could signify an emerging field or transitional space. It might also represent areas of research that are currently underexplored, or present nascent opportunities that haven't yet matured into trends with significant patent activity. And we know this has been a hot topic that's been growing a lot this year. We know there's also a lot of nearby sparse areas that many people can branch closer towards the hardware space. And so what you are going to see here are superconducting as kind of like one of the major areas. We see superconducting circuit fabrication as well as other topics. So as we continue, we'll start to see all the types of topics that have been kind of like active or showcased within the across the entire industry. And from here, if we wanted to get a bigger picture, we see there has been a major shift towards software from hardware, yet at the same time, there remains this sort of gap in the market that could be potentially leveraged accordingly. From here, we could also see different companies' patent portfolios. And such as IBM, we see there has been a lot of focus for them around resonators and quantum circuit generation and calibration. We also see there's quite a bit of activity around machine learning algorithms and simulations. So from here, we can also see different companies' sort of activities as well. And you can even filter it based on their years, whether it's 2024 or 2014. We also see Google showcase we see Google having a lot of activity around qubit calibration and flux qubits. So a little bit more hardware focused, like superconducting as well. As you can see, compared to IBM, IBM is quite more comprehensive and more on top of the quantum computing trends. And Google's kind of still in the hardware stages, or at least focusing accordingly. We also see Microsoft kind of focusing a little bit more towards the software side, but also kind of, they're doing a little bit within the gap between the hardware and software space, as you saw from previous slides, but more work still needs to be done within that area. And within Microsoft, we see decoders and data compression, topological qubits is kind of like their main areas of focus at the moment. So so it shows kind of like a broad approach to quantum computing. And at least in terms of the patents they filed, there might be a big gap in between their hardware technologies and software application layers. And quickly going over to like a much smaller company, let's say it could be your company or maybe it's your name. Within the context of, say, a small startup like D-Wave, we see that their focus within the radar itself seems to be around quantum annealing with an extension into superconducting technology. And so this focus aligns with kind of like D-Wave's known commercial offerings within quantum annealing, which are currently used for optimization tasks across various industries, including Web3. And overall, if we were to compare all the four of these, as mentioned, the competitive analysis shows that IBM kind of very much leads within the quantum computing space, followed by D-Wave, Microsoft, and Google. And the map illustrates how each company's patent clusters overlap or diverge, providing insights into the competitive landscape of quantum computing. The clusters related to hybrid quantum classical computing and growing hybrid systems suggest a trend towards integrating quantum and classical systems, which is really a pragmatic approach for the current state of quantum tech and for the players invested in the space. And so just to simplify the landscape once again, at least for this year, we continue to see that software has been the dominant sort of patent activity and will continue to grow as the years go by, far from hardware space itself. But some patents have started to appear within this ridge, so more development is needed to connect, or there could be more opportunities to position yourself or your company in between them. And of course, we have to touch on research papers to really get a sense of some of the points of innovation. And so from here, we see kind of the major areas of activities related to that. Keep in mind, we use academic research papers to be able to analyze, I think it was, 10,000 documents. We see all the major growing and sparse areas within the map. And we see that the overall trend has been shifting towards the right. and in particular towards the sparse areas, from quantum dynamics and noisy environments to network entanglement. The list goes on. And so, yeah, that is basically an example of, within this space, we can see Dirk England and Mikhail Lukin, both professors from MIT and Harvard. With this radar, you'd be able to see specific people and to potentially connect with them and kind of see what activities that, or what are some things they've been working on, let's say in 2023. So this would be a great opportunity for anyone to be able to kind of see and get a better understanding of where the entire industry is. And so that's my company called ValueNix. We hope you can join. We have a kind of like club called Insight Cafe. It's free to join. And every month, we showcase what is at the forefront of numerous industries to many Fortune 500 executives, government officials from all over the world, including investors and venture capitalists and corporate venture capitalists. I will show this for the next 30 seconds. So for this Thursday, we are going to showcase what is at the forefront of artificial intelligence and quantum technology. So this code will be up for 20 more seconds. And yes, please contact me for the promo code. Well, I guess since you all are here, I guess I'll mention it. It's ValueNix, the company name, VIP. So you can save yourself the $60 or whatever they're charging right now for the event. But we do hope you can be there because there will be a little bit of entertainment on top of showing the trends and insights within this industries, as well as dinner and networking opportunities in the heart and birthplace of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto.
What's the Sorry, can you say that promo code again?
ValueNix VIP, ValueNex VIP. So I will take this off in 10 seconds, and I will show you my LinkedIn profile as well if you would like to connect for further opportunities, or if you would like to use this radar potentially as a good class project, or if you are a professor, you can potentially have your students use this. They are free for those in academia. And if you are a potential investor or a company, we would love to see how we can collaborate as well. And lastly, here's my LinkedIn. I do hope you enjoyed this presentation. It was quite a lot of information, so I apologize for that. But I do hope you have taken something interesting from this. And yeah, I hope we can connect on LinkedIn and support each other over time. Thank you.
We have all our panelists here. I would like to mention Scott Fu, who's DePIN and Web3 growth lead at Peak, who's sitting on the left-hand side. Garrett Kinsman, who we just heard from, co-founder at Nodal. JP Bedoya, who's chief product officer at Civic. And David Tixon, who's chief degen at SUI, also operating under Maeston Labs. And as moderator, we have Balu Masti, who's advisor at Skydeck, Berkeley startup incubator. And I'm Ria. I'm the incoming co-president at Haas Blockchain Club. Could you go ahead and introduce yourselves? That'll be great.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Scott. I'm the growth lead at Peak Network. If you're unfamiliar with Peak Network, Peak is a layer one for strictly DePIN. We take all kind of IoT devices, machines, robotics, and turn them into dynamic real-world assets. And super excited to be up here with a bunch of legends. And thank you for having us.
Hi, I'm Garrett Kinsman. You just heard from me, but 2 random facts. I lived in India for 2 years once, and in my spare time, I am 3D printing one of the first polymer nuclear reactors.
I want to know about the polymer nuclear reactor now, but JP,
we have to talk DePIN.
With nuclear reactors, can we do that? Okay, I'm JP. I'm with Civic. Civic is an identity platform. We've been around since 2016. If you've been in the crypto space, you may have seen Civic. We go from authentication, verification, and attestation. So we try to cover everything that an application would need in order to manage their users.
Yeah, I'm David, and I guess most of my career I've spent in like the venture capital space in Web3. So one of the firms I worked for was one of the original investors in this small blockchain called Solana. And then I guess I invested personally into Miston Labs a few years ago. And so Miston Labs was a bunch of like the senior leadership team from Facebook, and they ended up building this next generation blockchain called SWI. And so I ended up joining like the SWI Foundation and I guess my fun title there is like the chief degen of SWI.
And I run into David everywhere, like in random cities around the world. Like it's just absurd.
Hi, first time here, pleasure to be here. I'm Balu Masti. I am a part of the Skydeck network. So I spend a lot of time with early stage startups, and awesome that you spend time in India. You know, I call myself Californian and Bangalorean, so I spend a lot of time in the finest of the ecosystems.
Namuru Bengaluru.
Oh wow, that's Namuru San Diego. So anyway, glad to be here. I work very closely with Paul as well on his startup.
Hi, everybody. We'll now proceed with the questions. So one very general overview question that I have from you is, you know how DePIN has emerged as a novel way to merge physical infrastructure and especially with the decentralized protocols. So how do you each see DePIN reshaping traditional infrastructure industries? And if you could talk a little bit about the challenges as well, because of course we are all very optimistic. That's why we are here. But talking about the challenges would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I guess we'll start off with problems. I'm sure all you guys up here, I would say regulatory framework, and that goes not only for DePIN, but real-world assets, real-world applications. No matter what aisle of the political aisle you fall on, just knowing that we can get some of this framework done now, seeing people like HUD.gov, the U.S. Department of Financial Protection, all of these people all of a sudden in the last 21 days are interested, especially people like HUD.gov, all of a sudden they're interested in DePIN data. News to me, in Singapore, none of this news was out. So I think, every day that we go on, whether it's someone joining the Buildle Fund on the RWA side, I think every day that there's somebody coming in that's going to just stabilize the framework side, and hopefully some of these laws get passed. But I don't want to take too much time.
I would say DePIN's interesting because it fundamentally rewrites how commerce and how business works. So we had one of the earlier, not the earliest, but one of the earlier, at least digital DePINs was the internet. It was a decentralized physical infrastructure network that created immense economic value. And that was a great example of something that when you decentralized it, created a lot more economic value than when you had a centralized version. We had the Bell telephone network. That was cool. You could argue the internet grew up on that. But as soon as you opened it up, it just unlocked this immense amount of value. And a lot of people are thinking, hey, can this be done for energy? Can this be done for commodities? We're working on this for IoT data and the verification of images and media. But it certainly applies to all types of other things. So think of DePIN as a different way to organize civilization in a way that I think is more redundant, which is good, at least at a long-term scale, but also more efficient. So it can create a lot more value for people.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think you brought this new way of thinking. I think to me, DePIN is that reimagination of pretty much everything that we have, right? So you can have a new cell phone network, you can have a new blockchain, the internet was that. But then I think the biggest challenge is changing the way that we think as a society and making that leap into, well, a centralized system is not what we want anymore. And actually, we were the ones that decided that centralized systems were what we wanted. When we said, "Oh, we need a government. We now have people that represent us," and that started to create some other problems that we can start talking about. So I think as DePIN becomes something that people start to better understand and adopt, I think that's when we are going to see fundamental changes in what is actually possible with these networks.
Yeah, I guess the cool thing about DePIN is it has like the users own the network and they're able to help contribute to what used to be a centralized entity. So instead of like AT&T running this phone service or IoT service, the users are running this, and the users get rewarded too. So for me contributing for running like the Chirp network built on SWI, like I get like tokens. And so I guess like it really empowers like regular people to get involved with running this infrastructure. It's also more reliable too, since there's no one central point of failure. It's this whole network of people all over. And so I think that's like the really cool thing about DePIN technology. Like everyone is an owner of the network with this type of structure.
So Helium is sort of the trailblazer, right? So what have we learned from that? And maybe a follow-up thing is, all of you are in the VC space as well, or startup space. What kind of, in the large landscape of startups that I get to interact with, it's sort of still in the infancy, right? The commerce and the monetization, right? So do we have what does it take? Maybe this thing we talked about, right, last 21 days, is this the push that is required to propel it to the stratosphere or something like that, right? Just your thoughts.
David, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, so I guess like now, the government's being much more friendly towards like crypto. Even like the future president wants to own like a crypto exchange, even release his own crypto projects and NFTs. So I guess the environment's much different than anything we've seen like before. And so I guess I guess everyone in the crypto market's super excited, and I guess a lot of teams have been building during this crypto winter. So when everyone pivoted towards AI, these really high quality teams are building during this whole winter cycle. And so we have like technology now that's more scalable, faster, and cheaper and than ever existed before. So I'm really excited about that. So I guess a lot of these really high quality DePIN projects, some of these teams have people that have been like very senior at Qualcomm and some of these big like companies out there in the communications field. And so I think we'll be seeing some of these like projects have like millions and possibly billions of people contributing to these networks, these DePIN networks. And also, I guess we've seen a lot of like these teams have tried to build like their own blockchain. Even Helium at one point tried to build their own blockchain. That didn't work out. And so they ended up like going on Solana, for example. So I guess a lot of these teams usually like partnering with like a really high quality blockchain. I think SWI offers like the top blockchain service of all. And there's no question about that. And so, so we love partnering with like high quality founders.
I mean, anything's better than Solana at this point.
Right. Well, I don't know. It's been doing well, but you ask about Helium, right? So do you guys use Helium? Do you know what Helium is? Yeah. How many? Two. Okay, so Helium is a mobile network operator, an MVNO, that also has a DePIN network as part of their whole platform, right? That they give you rewards by sharing your data. So every time that you're on your phone or not just using your phone, it is mapping everything that your phone has. I don't know, probably from a privacy perspective.
Your telco network is tracking every single thing everywhere that you go all the time.
So they're already doing that. Now Helium is still doing that, but now with the twist that they are giving you rewards in the mobile token. It's not the original HNT token that they had, it's a different token. So from a performance point of view, I think they're doing fine. They have like, I think 100,000 or so subscribers all around. But where they're making their money is in the data offload. So I know if you've seen that. So a lot of the networks are starting to buy services from Helium so that they can offload that last mile. So for example, here inside, getting cell phone service is not that great. But if you have the Helium mobile hotspots, any network operator can connect to those and then offload the data through that Wi-Fi hotspot. So I think their business model and the way they're approaching the market is pretty interesting from that perspective. So I do think that there is, I think, that opportunity to educate people on the benefits of DePIN and how they can benefit and own their data and also monetize that data that before they were not monetizing.
Yeah, I'd say again we're really at the beginning of DePIN. If you look at the revenues these companies are making, it's in the low single digits of millions. I don't know if you can think of an example of one that's making like actual, not like token revenues or DeFi, but real enterprise revenues.
Glow.
It's
million a month.
Million?
1.5 million on chain.
So we're but in the broader spectrum of Fortune 500s, this is still tiny companies. And so it really is just the beginning. The Helium is a great example, and especially decentralized wireless. You can certainly go into all the rabbit holes, but it's pretty boring unless you're somebody like me who loves this stuff. But the end result is you get cheaper and faster internet. And it puts a lot of pressure on the big telcos to provide you guys with cheaper and faster internet. So it's a great example of more competition is better. I think self-regulation has never worked ever, and now we're in an industry where the government says, hey, the internet should just self-regulate. So it's really important for there to be other players like Helium, like XNet, like all these other providers that are providing internet to people, and that give the big companies kind of a run for their money.
Yeah, I'm going to take a different angle on this. I think the chain islands got to stop. And what I mean by that is, so you have Helium, right? They're on Solana. They're great in Miami. They're great in certain spots. But for me, I would love them to call SWE and call Carrier One and go, yo, how could we work together? And if we're going to beat Verizon or we're going to go against these Web 2 monsters, it's not just going to be Helium that does it, in my opinion, right? It's going to take Helium's network combining with Carrier One, combining with XNet left, but whatever's on Polygon, whatever's on Peak, then we all can take that one network in DY or whatever it is, and then that could be challenging Verizon. But if we keep saying, oh, this is on Solana, this is on Peak, this is on SWE, the regular people don't care. My mom doesn't care what chain this is on. She's going to care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make her life easier. Does it make something more accessible? Does it make her money? If the goal is for retail and mass onboarding, that's the kind of thought process I'm having now, especially at Peak. And then the projects too as well. Because you got Chirp who works with SUI, but they also put devices on Peak. You have Natix who has their token on Solana, but they have their Peak IDs on Peak. So there's multiple ways other than like marketing and panels to work together. And it's going to take all the projects on all chains to challenge these top 100 companies.
It's honestly really confusing. Figuring out which chain's on what, who's interoperable with who, and then trying to implement it all is, it's tricky, but we are moving into a world that's multi-chain, doesn't matter. There's decentralized bridging, there's zero trust bridging happening now. So we're moving into a much simpler world.
Yeah, and real quick, that's why for us at Peak, it was very important to integrate with Wormhole, partner with Layer Zero, partner with MasterCard for on and off fiat payments, not just crypto. So, all liquidity open for DePIN, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. That was exciting. But in continuation to like your thread on interoperability, right? So we believe that like with different DePIN projects coming in, as you mentioned, such as Helium, Hive Mapper, focusing on very specialized use cases. So one question that I have from all of you is that how can future networks ensure this interoperability? How do you make sure that you're interoperable without trying to think that I'm trying to create a moat out here? I'd like Balu to step in to add to the question, because usually startups are looking to create a moat, and essentially DePIN projects are a little like startups at the start. So yeah, if you want to step in.
I think the answers to the last question were very insightful. Thank you. So yeah, just to add a little bit to what she's saying, yes, there's great tech. We all try to build moats, but you're saying, right, you need the big people to actually adopt.
Yeah, and same with this question, right? There's a lot of DePIN founders up here. Every time you make it, or there's another project with another device, it's not like there's 10,000 new users for that device. So what happens, just like liquidity, it fragments the community, it fragments the users. What I would like to see is something like we partner with Bosch to do this, is make an XDK sensor that works on multiple networks. If devices are your thing, I favor devices that work through your phone. If the data is clean, like Silencio, Nadix is really good. But I would like to see more devices be more open than just doing what they do with their device. So HiveMapper, why can't you work with Nadix? Why can't you work with Mapmetrics? But instead we have Nadix for your phone, HiveMapper device, Mapmetrics device, and it's not like you're getting new car or Demo as well. We don't want to forget about Demo. We love Demo. But it's not like they're all different users. It's the same guy who has, if you go look at Dark Virus on Twitter, he has like 42 different DePINs in his truck. It's not like you're getting a new user every time. So I would like to see, again, just like what I prefaced with before, is like the rising tide lifts the DePIN marina. And if we keep making these islands, it's going to be the same thing that we had in 2021.
I think you talked about Qualcomm, right? I spent many years in Qualcomm. Reminds me of the early days of wireless evolution. I've built, been privileged to be part of 1G, 2G, 3G. Exactly the same things happened. Everybody went off, did their own thing. Then came the 3GPP body, unified things. Is there any effort or anything on to kind of standardize this so that there's a lot of ways to interoperate between devices, between whatever problem you just described?
Well, I think the challenge is when there's financial incentive, people are going to try to game the system no matter what, right? So there's different things that you could do. Identity can be one of them, right? If you think about how can you create or how can you identify unique humans, and then based on that proof of humanity, you can say, well, there's this one individual, but they're using this, and that device. At the end of the day, is it bad that one person is using 20 devices when they are maybe different functionality, different this? I don't know, because not all the products are good, right? Some of them are good, some of them bad, and some of them are ugly. So at the end of the day, I think, and then when you talk about standards, well, there's this meme, right? There's 12 standards, so let's all get together. So there's only one standard that rules them all. And then now there's 13 standards, and then so on and so forth. So standards actually become a problem because at the end of the day, everybody always finds a problem with a standard that they want to make a better standard. So when it comes to chains, well, look, I'm not. I love Solana. I love EVM. I love Sui. Don't get me wrong. Although you left Solana to go to Sui. But at the end of the day, really, chains are just providing block space, and chains are going to be commoditized no matter what. Every chain says, right? They want to be unique, they want to do this, but at the end of the day, they provide block space. And you look at what the Ethereum ecosystem is doing, the L1s that used to want to fight Ethereum are becoming L2s. So they are really trying to consolidate. And I think they are a very good example of trying to create a unified ecosystem, at least. Now you have all the other L1s with Sui, Solana, and I don't know, Say, Aptos, whatever comes up next. Monad is the other big one, right? So it's a very different problem because going back to the economic incentives and then VCs become also part of the problem. So you have this self-fulfilling prophecy where, okay, the next VC is like, okay, you're deploying an L2 here, you got a lot of money, but you are deploying a real project, I'm not going to give you money because there's not going to be that pump and dump that is going to happen within my TGE in 6 months. They just want money really quick. So it's a difficult problem to solve.
Right.
Thank you.
I would just add, I think the blockchains will be the interoperability layer, the standards for IoT and devices. It's just going to take another decade probably. We're still in a world where we love centralization. Like all the big enterprise companies, they love certificate authorities and big boring standards that were built in the 90s that are a hell to implement. But I think blockchain will be really the solution because it's easier to implement, it's cheaper, it's more secure, you can't censor it. So I think it will be blockchain, especially EVM, will be the messaging layer to bring a lot of these different technologies together, like 5G or 6G. We'll see if GSMA ever gets to adopting blockchain. We had a great example of Smart Home. The Matter Alliance actually uses a blockchain for their certificate authority. Now they've deployed a private blockchain, but it's a nice step in the right direction that I think we'll continue seeing that.
5G is the beginning, I suppose, right? Yeah.
Well, if you look, I know probably none of you care about wireless standards, but if you look at how are we going to make 6G work, how are we going to keep us all streaming VR and streaming all this stuff, streaming AI chatbots, you can only really do two things unless you come up with another trick, a wireless trick. You can add more cell towers, which under the old model is prohibitively expensive. You need models like Helium or XNet or new models to deploy all these base stations. Or you have to share spectrum in a really collaborative way, which will probably never happen. So you need more base stations. You need a way to get them on the ground. So DePIN really is the answer for a lot of these things.
Okay, thank you so much for that response. Again, I think just drawing from the conversation, it seems like Solana seems to be an all-time common favorite. So just wanted to ask that as Solana competes with other layer 1 blockchains for market share, how might the token dominance that Solana has position it as a favorable choice for DePIN projects? And how do you think that it holds up versus other blockchain networks?
I'll take it quickly. And again, I'm heavily biased. But the main issue I have with Solana is that if you want to deploy something for enterprise, it has to be 99 with 3 to 5 nines uptime. If Amazon loses, if Amazon goes down for just a few minutes, the losses are insane. And so if you take the uptime that Solana has had and apply that for enterprise use cases, it just doesn't fly. It's a complete non-starter for any enterprise deal. So I think they've done an incredible job gathering DePIN, but they have a lot of work to do to get the uptime required for this to actually be a real enterprise prospect, in my opinion. But again, I'm heavily biased, so don't listen to me.
I'm biased too, obviously. That's our competitor. But hey, proof is in the pudding. How many projects just in the last 90 days have migrated from Solana to Peak fully? And I'll leave it there.
I don't know. How many?
Many. No metrics, you go all day.
I'd love to see. I'm not with Solana, right? But I work with Solana a lot. And yeah, it's had its problems. It's much better now. I don't know if it's 99,999, but it hasn't really gone down lately. And they're doing a lot of work to bring a new client that it's called Fire Dancer. They're supposed to be, the next best thing. They are, I think, learning a lot from Ethereum. Ethereum, I think, has really set a great example on how to set up decentralization, how to become that, internet computer or the world computer, whatever Vitalik's vision is. So I think you're going to see Solana getting better. What Solana did really well was focus on developers when nobody else was. Right, Solana invested a lot of money on the hacker houses around the world, doing on Breakpoint and whatnot. We spent a lot of fun times there, and they brought all these developers, and now they have this crazy infrastructure, and now they have according to A16, 100 million active wallets a month, which is bigger than Base, bigger than Near, bigger than everybody else. So you can take that for what it is.
And if your metric isn't generating actual revenues, and your metric is token returns for your initial investors, then they've done a great job.
I actually don't think so. From that perspective, for the token, they may have done some good job. I do think that they are bringing more applications, more retail. They are making it, you have the pump.fun and people want to get into that. But look, this is a smart ring, and it's a Solana project that wants to do DePIN, and they're trying to do some of those things. So I think from your perspective, where you say, Solana is doing a lot, it's pretty strong, yes, but I also see, Base coming with really, really strong with what they're doing. I think they're doing a really nice job. I have to learn more about what Peak is doing. I would really like to check that out for sure.
Yeah, and just real quick, to push back on that, and the reason why you see a lot of migrations is Solana is so big, right? It's not just DePIN, it's DeFi, it's NFT, PFPs, enterprise stuff. So when you go on these intro calls, and this is telling founders out here, be careful. You're going to get sold a dream. No matter what blockchain you're going to go to, they're going to promise you all these things. Can that BD that you were talking to really deliver on that stuff? Can you really get you to the IRL events that you want to speak at? Can you get you on the Twitter spaces that you want to be on? Can you get you the KOLs who didn't pump 7 pump.fun meme coins the week before? Probably not. And you're seeing a lot of these people from 6 months ago to 9 months ago get told this dream at some of these bigger chains. They're sitting there, no Twitter spaces, no co-marketing, no collaborative, anything. And what happens? They have to find a new chain, and you're going to go to the chain where, Web3 founders like to be coddled and taken care of, and make sure that that your project's in good hands. And you see it with Sui too. Everyone's going there. Yeah. You're seeing Base now. You're seeing there's only going to be 4 to 5 homes of DePIN, and that's because the people at these chains see the vision in the next 5 years, 10 years, whether it's machine to machine. Whether it's AI agents in the machines like we were discussing. But yeah, like anyone can go build on Solana, but is Solana going to take care of you once you come build it?
Come on, BB, come to Dubai. But I want to hear what David has to say, because you were in there from the beginning. You've seen it. You've been in the trenches.
Yeah, I guess I know Solana really well. So I even hosted the first Solana ecosystem event ever back in the day. So I guess I know that ecosystem quite well. And so I guess there are issues that I saw with Solana, even when I was very Solana maxi back in the day. And so it's really hard to develop on Solana. So I guess a lot of the developers usually say developing on Solana is like chewing glass. It's really difficult. That was always the big thing. It was too hard to develop on it. Then the reliability issues started being questions. It is getting better. The Solana hasn't really had any outages lately. But that's always the thing that's plagued them, that the network's unreliable. And so eventually, I guess I met the team that started Sui a few years ago. So they were leaving Facebook, and so I ended up hearing the pitch of what they were going to do. And so I guess they had their own Move virtual machine, which is this new language in virtual machine, and it's 10 times easier to develop on than developing on Solana, or even the EVM too. So even someone Solana's top projects, Rooter from Solen Save. Came to build on Sui, and he says, developing on Sui is chewing puree. It's not chewing glass on Solana. And I guess the reliability of Sui is really good. It's the only high performance network out there that has had 100% uptime. And so the team comes from, pretty much all the big tech companies like Apple, Facebook, Google. And so they know how to run a network at scale. And so that's the thing we're really proud about, is the engineering quality of Sui, and making sure that the network's always up there and it never goes down.
How important that is for enterprise. That's a non-starter for enterprise.
I think
There's a question there.
Yeah, there's a question.
Yeah, awesome talk. Agree on a lot of points. I actually had a call with Peak Ecosystem today, which is pretty cool. This morning. Would you say projects should be more chain agnostic, or projects should be sticking to its own chain? And if you were a chain, would you say you would limit projects which built on top of you to stick only within your ecosystem, or would you be more willing and open for them to collab in different ecosystems?
You have to be chain agnostic. So we've migrated between 3 different chains, and it was super painful. That was like chewing glass.
Which ones?
We started with Stellar, and people said we should have just developed on ETH, and we should have just developed on ETH. We started with Stellar, we moved to Polkadot. Polkadot at the time was awesome, but they really failed with the governance, and they failed with the economics. I mean, we lost so much money with that, so much money. And then now we're on EVM on ZK Sync, which is actually beautiful. It's super high performing. It just works. The team is awesome. So I'd say as a startup, you have to be willing to migrate, because in many cases, what you want to do might not exist yet. I mean, we want to support millions of users, a stupid number of transactions, make it easy for anybody just to take a picture and sign it. And a year ago, that really wasn't possible easily, especially in a cost-efficient way. and now it is. And so there's always new technologies coming out. Maybe Sui is actually going to be the chain that all these other projects adopt and these big, enterprise companies adopt. Maybe it's going to be Solana. Maybe Solana gets their act together and they start producing really, really high performance code. So you have, as a startup, you have to be willing to pick the best technology for the job.
Yeah, real quick. For us at Peak, there's two buckets, I guess. One bucket would be, we love native builders that not only have their Peak IDs on Peak, but also drop a piece of their TGE. But you don't want to chase away, good projects just saying, if you don't build natively on Peak and put all your devices here, you can't, we won't support you. So whether it's a technical integration, whether it's, part of the token supply on Peak, but keeping your Peak IDs on our network like Natix does. So Natix wanted the liquidity from Solana, but they wanted the tech from Peak. So we're cool with that as well. And I think Wingbits is going to do the same thing. On my end, you'll catch me at an IoTex event. You'll catch me at a Solana event. I don't care. I just want everyone to work together.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to add is it really depends on what you're trying to do. So for example, at Civic, we are chain agnostic. We issue the attestations on Solana, on EVM. It doesn't really matter to us, right? But maybe for what you're building, you got to pick one chain. It's not that you started with one chain and then you left that chain, you went to another chain, and then you went to another chain. And it's not that you're on the 3 chains. So I think it really depends on what you're building. You should probably choose one, depending on what you're building, deploy on that, and go all in on one chain. Because I do believe that at some point, the chain is just not going to matter. It becomes your application server. That's where you're deploying, that's where you're building. Your users are not going to care, right? So that, I think, it's part of what you need to think about when you are building an application or building a business. Other questions?
So what do you guys think about the currency for the agent network for agents to do the transactions?
For AI?
Yeah.
At Peak, we're really bullish on, so let's just use an example. So got my washing machine at home. It's a smart washing machine. Now I want to put AI agents into my protocol where now my washing machine is only going to wash at the lowest peak times. And then also at the same time, take my extra power, store it in a virtual power plant, and offload that onto a marketplace for cheaper price to someone maybe powering a data center. And AI agents is going to run that autonomously for the program, like what is it called? Can't remember the Star Power, like Star Power does. And also it could be used in mobility as well. So imagine it took me 45 minutes to find a parking space here. Imagine now if my car could be machine to machine, talk to all the parking lots that are already here, and then have that negotiate the spot for me. So I just pull in and jump out my car, payment comes out of my Apple Pay.
I think it's a beautiful dream. It's so early. Like we're just starting to see agents hit the market now. And I know a lot of projects are talking about that. It is a beautiful dream, machines paying each other. I think it's so early. And my guess is, the big payment like MasterCard or Visa or PayPal will just copy what some of these like crypto startups do, and they'll just do it in a centralized way, and they'll throw $1 billion at it.
And real quick, that's why we partnered with MasterCard.
I think, sorry.
Another question.
Oh, anything else or? Oh yeah, I guess the AI agent stuff is really cool. And so I think eventually like one of the biggest users of these blockchains are going to be AI agents. I think even like the NASDAQ right now, I think like 70% of the transactions are done by like bots like right now. And so eventually I see these like AI agents are going to love like transacting on a blockchain. It's trustless, it's fast. They don't need a bank account. And so I think that's the end state that we're eventually going to go to. And I guess we're entering that world right now where there's going to be all these AI agents running companies and they're going to be interacting with blockchains. And that's starting right now. I guess like there's like the case of GOAT. If you've heard about this, like there's like an AI agent that like started a token, and the thing went up to like $1 billion market cap in a month. So I guess we're entering that age that AI and like Web3 and crypto are coming together, and I guess this will be one of the most fun times too, and some of the most interesting like projects are going to get built, and that's starting right now. It's only been happening in the last month, so I'm really excited about this area.
Yes.
What type, and it's probably like a pretty open question for everyone, but what type of like partnerships and integrations you would love to see from like Web3 AI projects?
Oh, so I guess like payments. I guess everyone's been talking about crypto is perfect for payments. And so I guess like these agents are going to be doing like deals with each other. And yeah, they're going to be using crypto for that. And I feel like, yeah, it makes sense. I guess right now we haven't seen it work yet, but I guess this is like the end state that I see like Web3 and AI overlapping. So I guess the payments and these agents doing deals together and like building these armies of and swarms of agents working together. I think this is eventually happening.
So like in the short term, like I would love to see flights. Like I want an AI that just books flights for me because I hate dealing with all the web forms. And it just almost seems to never work. So I want an AI that can book flights. In the long term, there's a science fiction book called Damon, which was written in the early 2000s that you should totally read because it talks almost exactly like what he was saying. And it's a fantastic piece of science fiction.
I would like AI to really adopt identity in some shape or form. So you know that you are who you're dealing with. I think you talk a little bit about that with the PDPA, like what's what. I think AI agents and bots are actually pretty great. It's how you use them and knowing that you're interacting with an AI versus a real human that really matters at the end of the day. So just I think that interweaving of identity across everything is going to be required for the next generation of applications to really to really come to fruition, in my opinion.
One more question.
That aspect that you're speaking of, that proof of humanity, I know that the World's Coin is working on something like that. Are there projects on SWE or on Peak where this kind of concept is also becoming a reality? Are people building these types of?
Yeah. There's a project called Civic that I'm part of. We do proof of humanity. We also use biometrics, but we don't use an orb and whatnot. We use a front-facing camera, which is something that WorldCoin just announced or just launched. We've been doing it for 5 years at this point. So you have already proven technology. There's a few other ones that you can use, but yeah, Civic is a great alternative if you want to check that out.
I got two questions on agents. One is who controls the private key of the agent? So if the agent starts hallucinating, starts doing weird stuff, is there still an owner that controls the private key? Because in the case of Code, I don't think Code created the token, it was someone else. And the owner still has the wallet. It's not actually controlled by the agent. The agent is, to a large extent, just hallucinating at this point, and it's doing whatever it wants to. I know the future is agents talking to each other, doing deals with each other and everything, but at the end of the day, who's going to have the private key, and what if it gets hacked? Or is there still going to be a person behind that private key, like these farmers, who have like hundreds of thousands of bots and doing all kinds of stuff? Or are these agents truly autonomous?
Yeah, no, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, you saw the other day when the agent got bored and he started going on Google and looking at images for vacations. I thought that was pretty interesting. So, I mean, if it's already doing that now, like just imagine like in a year when it gets bored, like all of a sudden it's playing with new codes. Like, I don't know, we don't want anything like that to happen. I think there's a big open runway for someone building that. Like, so if anyone in here feels like building something, I think there's a huge open runway for that kind of infrastructure because, like you said, Godius is ran by the guy that A16Z sent the $50,000 to. So it's actually, it's still ran by a human. So I feel like we're still kind of Web 2.5. Until we can get those security issues and obviously regulatory framework, we still don't know what that's going to look like, having AI agents make decisions for the human race. But at least they said that China and America are not going to share the new codes with AI.
Yeah, and to that point as well, right? I don't know if you guys saw, I heard that Stripe came out with their own agent framework, right, which could plug in the credit cards. So you can use some of these credit cards. Agents can actually do all that stuff in fiat and with credit, and you can actually set limits and stuff like that. So that was going to be my second question: is could do most of what agents could do in the future. And they actually had a use case where it does your scenario where they set it up for the credit card and it goes and actually books travel for you. I think Perplexity has a shopping app as well now where it can go shop, find the lowest price, and actually book something for you or buy something for you.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, it's already here.
I do think that we will see fully autonomous agents a lot faster than we expect, because if you look at just the cost of decentralized computing is almost nothing. I mean, we launched a smart mission on our app recently for decentralized compute, and there's a couple different providers that are doing this. So basically you can pool together all of the compute of millions or billions of smartphones to have like a decentralized data center. And now saying, hey, somebody can deploy an agent that's fully autonomous on top of that, maybe even leveraging the AI acceleration on iOS and on Android. I think we're moving very quickly into a world where you'll have fully autonomous agents with their own private keys doing things and making money and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's kind of how biology works today, is you've got these autonomous bacteria and viruses and all this stuff floating around, making decisions and reproducing with other bacteria. So I think we will probably see something like that. I don't know what it will look like. It'll probably be like, trading bots or something. But I think it'll probably happen a lot faster than we think.
Great. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, very good. So, yeah, we do have a question. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Garrett. Why did you choose EVM specifically?
So we went down basically every single route, and we wanted to choose the tech that was the most robust and the most reliable. The EVM is great for two reasons. One, very high liquidity. It's where everybody's trading. And then two, we have all the interoperability with all the other projects. So it's automatically works with Etherscan. It automatically works with your indexers and all the other things that you wanted to do. I'm a big fan of the kind of, Polkadot really pioneered it with this parachain approach, where you have a bunch of separate blockchains that all kind of share data using a common blockchain. That's how ZK Sync is roughly architected as well. And I think that's a really great architecture. And just using EVM makes you compatible, plug and play with all these other projects. Again, that's the same benefit of going to Solana or going to Sui, but today EVM has the highest level of network effects, and when you're a startup, you want to leverage these network effects to your greatest advantage.
And real quick, that's the same reason why Peak, word for word, the same reason why we're EVM as well.
Yeah, but I guess the EVM, it's like the standard right now for like Web3, but I guess there's only like around like 10,000 developers in total in Web3 right now. I think the Electric Capital report usually does this every single year. So I guess what is the standard for Web3 in the future is still not set. I guess there's like millions of developers out there in the world. And so I think what will be the standard long term can be set. And I guess like the Move virtual machine, the Move language is noted for being like safer. There's a lot of like smart contract vulnerabilities that can't happen on like Move. I think there's like 27 in total versus like Solana, the EVM versus the Move language. So the Move language is safer. It's what Facebook had designed for like smart contracts. And so I feel like in my world, I guess like the standard isn't set. I could see a Move being the standard that all chains would be using and like the most dominant chains.
So it's interesting because, we all used to use dial-up internet as well. So it's like the standard today probably won't be the standard in 10 years, but you also have the network effects like Betamax versus VHS or, DVD and Blu-ray. And it's like, in my opinion, the one that already has the most users today will most likely be the one that's the most likely to be around in 10 or 50 years. And that's, again, why we chose EVM. But Sui could just be so much better that it just starts attracting people. I've heard this with Ink, with Polkadot. I've heard this argument, for the past decade. But it really is a fascinating thing to watch, and I hope Sui gets tons of users, and I hope Solana fixes their issues, and we can be interoperable and just create tons of value for everybody.
There's another question there.
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. Disclaimer, I was on the panel earlier. I work in this labs with the original contributor of Sui. Something else that often gets overlooked is what is actually capable with the technology itself. Because speed, those sort of things, cost, being cheap, that's like table stakes. But when you start to dig up fundamentally what is possible with that core technology, that becomes really relevant. And something else that's different with Move is that it's an object-centric language. It's not account-centric. And everything on EVM is account-centric. A lot of people don't know this. That is a large reason why transactions are so damn expensive on Ethereum. It's because when you want to do something, you're not directly doing it. You have to find all these complicated proxy ways to reroute what's happening because everything is manipulated from an account perspective rather than what's actually the standard in most coding, which is the thing is just an asset, it's an object itself. So if you want to move a token from one wallet to another, or from one account to another, you just move that token because it's an object that gets moved around and not some abstraction that's happening with an account. And these are some of the nuances a lot of people don't often get into, and this is a large reason why developing coding on Move is easier objectively. It is safer objectively because of the simplicity in which the language itself is out. Recently, for anybody who's around many years ago, IOTA even announced that they are fully moving over to Move VM. They're doing something to try to make it EVM compatible as well, but it's being recognized, and that was not through any coordination with Mr. Labs or Sui Foundation. So Sui has only been live on mainnet less than a year and a half, but we're already seeing how rapidly these adaptations are taking place. So always dig another layer deeper, you know what I mean, to see what's going on and the different enhancements.
I would just say I think a lot about like intergalactic or interplanetary DAOs, and I do believe we're just probably a few decades away from a true von Neumann probe, which is the idea that you can build a box, send it off into space, and it like self-replicates, like it captures ice and like dirt and stuff, and makes other probes. And I like to think that it's probably not running Solidity, but it probably will be using some sort of decentralized technologies for managing trust.
So maybe a small related thing that I wanted to bring up was sustainability and the environmental impact. So just decentralizing it, does it have, in your experiences and in terms of, has it had a positive impact on reducing the footprint, and has it been better for the sustainability story?
So there's some things that are really good centralized. Like if you actually look at like heat pumps or thermal management, that's really good centralized. So building a data center actually has a lot of economic and thermal benefits to just building it huge, building it really big. But when it comes to decentralization, other types of energy management, like managing solar panels or batteries, that without a doubt works way better using decentralized systems. So I would say the net result of decentralization is very, very positive in my opinion. Just if you just say, like, look at rooftop solar, just that alone, it offsets any energy consumption by other like Bitcoin mining or other things like that. So I would say the net result is very, very positive in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would add that I think it's only going to get better too over time, and as the systems become more and more optimized, I think you're seeing that all these blockchains start to compare themselves. It's like, okay, what's a Google query? What's a Solana query? What's an Ethereum query? They're starting to measure themselves in how much energy they're using. So I think they are being very conscious. I don't know if that's true, but also I think when renewable energy gets also much more efficient, I think if you look at solar panels, they're very efficient. And you have all these mining systems that they are deploying their own solar panels so they can be also self-sustainable. But I think you're going to see a lot of this starting to become more and more decentralized, but also more and more efficient over time.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people are scared like decentralized technology being bad for the environment. I guess there was like a whole thing about Bitcoin being bad for the environment by how much electricity it uses. Because most like the electricity like Bitcoin uses is like renewable energy, and I guess even like there was like studies comparing like how much like a transaction for these like next generation blockchains are like Sui. Like the amount of electricity like a Sui transaction uses is less than like you searching something on Google. So if you really cared about the environment, I guess you would stop using Google because it's more bad for the environment than doing a Sui transaction. So I guess we're at that point that the environment's not really impacted as much as what I guess people were saying like previously about like blockchain technology.
Yeah, and I would say on the front-facing side of a lot of this stuff, I mean, all these DePINs are doing nothing but like helping the earth out, whether it's noise pollution data, light pollution, decentralized Wi-Fi, making a village in Mozambique, grow from 30 to 150 people. You got FarmSense, getting all farmers' commodities in one place. You got Big Water that's helping out last mile delivery. You got PickSpot who's doing Amazon-style locker boxes for last mile delivery, because all of us, we just walk outside of our door, Amazon package is there. Doesn't work like that in Africa and a lot of other countries. So I would say I would say 75% of these projects, decentralized storage, right? Compared to something like AWS, or it's night and day, or pooling all the cell phones that you did instead of using a brand new energy or a brand new center for that. So I think it's sustainable all across the board, pretty much.
And I'll add, I think when we're looking back, say 1,000 years from now at history right now, there will be two big things, except, hopefully not the political situation, but there'll be two big points that will be very interesting. One is the advent of AI. And then the other is the idea that, we hooked up AI to nuclear reactors, because the way that the extent to which civilization can expand is directly linked to energy. And if you look in the past several thousand years, the Roman Empire was defined by burning, peat and burning wood. And then we had the Industrial Revolution was built on coal. And now we're in the petrochemical age. And so, I kind of like the idea that Bitcoin uses a ton of energy, because that's what, backs it. That's what makes it valuable. And it's that drive for energy, be it Bitcoin or be it AI now, these massive compute clusters that are going to allow civilization and incentivize us to create these next generation technologies. Like, I think just based on the few deals that were done in the past few months for nuclear reactors, I think we're that much closer now to fusion power, because of that much more investments going into the industry. We now have, a whole reactor fleet that can be making tritium for fusion. So I think that these technologies are just pushing us closer and closer to that future that we all really, really dream about. So I think it's a really cool time to be alive.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I have like a follow-up question with respect to, how we've spoken a lot about sustainability, but it will also become sustainable if there's mass adoption, right? To which I see, as of now, there are like two roadblocks that I see. One is the incentive structure, which sometimes is very skewed towards early adopters. Like when you first start using a decentralized, product, you basically get incentivized in terms of tokens and so on. And early adopters get a lot of tokens, which they later, kind of dump on late users, let's say. And then when they are getting incentivized in the same number of tokens, the value is just lesser. So token incentive is definitely an issue that I see. And the second being hardware infrastructure, which is more of like, as we spoke about a little earlier, there's like issues with, how every DePIN provider will have their own specific hardware. So like routers, if it's like telecom, as well as like dash cams, if it's Hive Mapper and so on. And then if everybody starts having like 20 of these gadgets, then it's, mass scaling is going to be really difficult according to me. So would love to hear your comments on how do you think it can scale up while like these two constraints are still there in the whole ecosystem.
Well, I would just say use smartphones. Like everything that we're building is to enable your smartphone to do things that it couldn't or wasn't allowed by the powers that be to do. And I think we're in a cool spot now where the regulators are saying to Apple and Google that, no, you have to let people do what they want with their phone. You can run nodes on your phone. You can use the cameras and the sensors to do really cool things. So I think that's just use phones. That's my simple answer.
What I would like to see, this is kind of a weird angle. Like, I'm going to keep coming with the weird angles. Some of these projects represent certain sectors, especially some of the ones like in aviation and aerospace. Like WingBits, for example. You take a Raspberry Pi, order an ABS antenna from Amazon, and you are now a radar control tower from your house. If you look at like their competition in Web 2, it'd be Flight Radar. So any of my airplane nerds, if you have the Flight Radar app, you can look at airplanes, you can check your flights, see, track them, do whatever. There's these two small companies called Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. They've spent over $500 million with Flight Radar for that dirty data set. And nothing wrong with the data. It's just, it's Flight Radar antennas and then airplane antennas and then any hobbyist antennas in there. What is that data set going to look like compared to something like WingBits when you have a radar antenna, you have a radar antenna, you all have a radar antenna?
I've got SDRs laying on my desk right now.
Yeah, and then they go to those two small companies, and we're just naming two, right? Just Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, and just say one of them wants to buy the data. What I would like to see, to answer your question, is either a burn of the token or the data set being bought for that much money trickle down to the users. We haven't really seen that yet, but now you're seeing, shout out to Nolo. You guys are, talking to partnerships. I know Helium's, doing a bunch. Everyone's pretty much getting, these big partnerships in. So if the data set is sold, I would love to see it trickle down to the users in some way, whether it be a burn or something like that.
I think that we need to rethink tokenomics a little bit. To your point, the way that early adopters get incentivized, it all gets driven by the VCs that want to get that early return. And look, I used Helium Mobile from the beginning. I was a beta user and whatnot. I remember I was getting initially, I think it was 20,000 tokens a day rewards. Now I'm getting 500, right, for the same thing. So why was I getting more at the beginning? And that's, it's the tokenomics that ultimately try to incentivize the early adopters, and which is okay. You need those early adopters that start pushing your product out there and become your marketing channel. Yeah. The problem is that they are marketing something that is not sustainable in the long term. Yeah. So that's why tokenomics need to be rethought, in my opinion, to be able to address that problem you bring up.
Got it.